my name's Stonesy Boy, and welcome back to Reading with Stonesy. Today we're back with Lallys Game. We're doing 181 to 200, to 200, not 2,200, but 200. And yeah, let's just get it started. Of course, before you read or before you listen, maybe you should do some breathing exercises. Simple and you know? Because yesterday, when I was reading, I was having a hard time, like keeping my breath. It felt like there was a pain in my lungs, and I couldn't figure out why until I started doing breathing exercises, and now I'm way better. Okay, so let's get to reading, and this would be relatively quick, maybe 20 minutes. It was filled with happy memories. How could a new, big house compete with that? What's going on? Lena asked. Maya laughed. It's my birthday, that's what. Lena squinted at the glowing blue numbers on her clock radio, which sat on her shared nightstand. Not for another 42 minutes and 15 seconds. Maya laughed again and squeezed her precise sister. Close enough. Besides, I already had my big party. Lena frowned. But I wasn't there. Yes, you were. Everyone was. It was the best party ever. Elena wrinkled her broad nose and made her face at Maya. She wrinkled free of Maya's embrace. You're weird. You're weird. Elena rolled her eyes and flopped back onto bed. Get out of my bed. I need my brain sleep. Maya smiled. Maya's mother was always telling her girls they needed their beauty sleep, but cerebral, not concerned with beauty, but Lena took issue with that. She said she got brain sleep that helped her be smarter. Whereas Maya had gotten looks, Elena had gotten brains. Elena might have been shorter and plainer than Maya, but what she lacked in beauty, she made up in smarts and confidence. Elena was a year behind Maya in age. She was years ahead of Maya in education and accomplishments. Maya was content to be a teenager. Elena was in a hurry to be an adult. She was a math whiz, and the following year she was going to be enrolled in a local college. Maya wasn't envious at all about Elena's brilliance. In fact, Maya was super proud of Elena. Maya was content to be Maya, and she celebrated Elena's Elena-ness. It had been, however, incredibly nice of the center of attention at her Pizzaplex birthday party. Maya hadn't usually get to shine like that. It was an experience she never going to forget. The next day, Maya's family threw her the usual birthday party on the porch in the grass in front of their house. Because the home's front yard was small, the party was spilled into the street and into the neighboring yards. Even though decorations were minimal, the giant oaks and weeping willows of the sheltered and the small houses in the neighborhood provided all the beauty Maya could have asked for. Maya's birthday was in May, apparently inspiration for her name. And it was always warm this time of year. As usual, iridescent hummingbirds and fluttering yellow monarch butterflies were floating around in the flower beds at the base of the porch rails in front of the Maya's house. They were net better than balloons. This year, besides the customary simple happy birthday banner strung across the front of the house, the decor also included a Sweet 16 sign Maya's youngest cousins had made. The big cardboard sign was lettered with crayons and decorated with glitter and childlike drawings of red roses. The piñata was a usual vaguely shaped horse from Maya didn't even like horses, and the cake was a big flat chocolate one with a slanted "Happy Birthday, Maya" written in store-bought tubed icing. The celebration couldn't have been more different from the one at the Pizzaplex. The only similarity was the presence of all Maya's family and friends, and Mrs. Lambert offering her award-winning coffee cake. The cake was actually welcome. Maya preferred the apple and crumb top cake than the chocolate one her family had for her. Thanks for coming, Mr. and Mrs. Lambert, Maya said when she went to sit with them. They brought her their own folding chairs and had set themselves up under a gnarly oak near the street. They watched the party as if it was a war instead of a celebration. Deep frowns etched between their brows. Humph, Mr. Lambert said predictably. I hope you enjoyed my award-winning coffee cake, Miss Lambert said. It's as delicious as always, Miss Maya told her. She wanted to hug the old lady, but Miss Lambert's erect posture and stiff shoulders were good as a keep-away sign. Maya left the Lamberts and headed back toward the porch. As she crossed the yard, she rubbed her temples. This morning when she'd gotten up, her forehead had hurt, right where a couple of the AR headband's nodes had touched her skin. She figured the headband had just irritated her skin, but the pain felt more like a mild headache now. Hey, birthday girl, Noelle called out. Maya forgot about her headache and joined her friends. After the birthday cake had been cut, Maya and the other kids and teens took turns swatting the piñata. As always, the Davis twins, tow-headed Weasley and Wendy, swinging in unison, were the ones who cracked the papier-mâché open. When they fought each other for the first grab of the candy, everyone else hung back. The tall and nearly 13-year-old competitions were infamous. It was best not to get in their way. Though this party did not have a small table of gifts, the present opening wasn't the focal point of the affair. Maya's mom always emphasized that gifts were optional. Presents is more important than presents. Her invitations always said. She knew the people in Maya's neighborhood and her school weren't well off. The custom at Maya's family's parties was for the birthday celebrant to open a present here and there. If a person is giving the gift wanted to see it open, as usual, the most eager Maya gift givers were the Thompson kids. Donnie, 10, Parker, 6, and Aurora, 5, were Maya's 3 favorite kids, after her cousins, of course. She was a frequent babysitter because of her parents. Still pretty young because they married when they were 18 and had Donnie a few months later, yet hadn't yet grown out of their need to party. They went clubbing regularly. They were great parents, though, and Mr. Thompson was an awesome baker. Maya loved lingering in the Thompsons' pristine kitchen after a couple got back from their dates. Snickerdoodle time, Mr. Thompson would say, and Maya and the Thompsons would each eat one of the big soft cookies while Mr. Thompson told his jokes. His favorite jokes were typical dad humor. Knock, knock, Mr. Thompson said a few nights before. Maya had answered dutifully, Who's there? Alpaca. Alpaca who? Alpaca the luggage. You pack of the car. Maya and Mr. Thompson had grown in unison. Mr. Thompson always managed to make Maya laugh several times when he walked her home. The cookies and the jokes were great, but the couple paid Maya well, too. For the last 3 years, since they moved in a few houses down from Maya's home, the Thompson kids had made Maya birthday presents. The first year, they gave her bookmarks made from tongue depressors, Miss Thompson was a nurse, and crayon and glitter decorated brown lunch bags that looked like they'd already been used. Last year, she got a necklace made out of pipe cleaners. This year, the kids had gone all out. They made her a scrapbook constructed from more brown lunch bags and filled with glue and on buttons, string, and photos of the 3 kids. This is wonderful, Maya gushed when they insisted she open her present. I picked out the buttons, Pug-Nosed Aurora announced. She beamed with pride, and her brother snorted. Well, you did a great job. I appreciate all the effort you put into it, Maya told them. The kids accepted her thank you hugs and scampered off to see if Wesley and Wendy had left any candy behind. Maya appreciated everything about her party, and she had a great time playing with her cousins, especially little Axel, Aunt Sophia, and Uncle Peter's youngest. Axel was a pudgy-faced 4-year-old with dark eyes, and a grin that never disappeared. Maya loved babysitting him. He was obsessed with patty cake, and they played it so long that Maya's palms were sore, and Axel finally got drowsy enough to curl up in her lap and go to sleep. When Aunt Sophia, her long braids looped on top of her head in an intricate knot, picked up her youngest son, she kissed Maya on the forehead. Feliz cumpleaños, mi sobrina. Thanks, Aunt Sophia. Maya grinned when Sophia raised an eyebrow. I mean, gracias, Tia Sophia. Maya's grandparents had come to the U.S. before they had their children. Sophia, Lucina, and Maya's mother, Violetta, they learned English right away and made sure the 3 girls were bilingual from the start. The same was true about their grandchildren. Between them, Maya's mother and aunts had given Maya's maternal grandparents 12 grandchildren. Sophia and Peter were responsible for 6 of those. Lucina and Raphael had 4 kids. Maya's mother had brought up the rear with her 2 girls. Recently, Sophia had become obsessed with celebrating the family's Puerto Rican heritage, and she had taken Spanish lessons. She was insistent that Maya learn too. Maya humored her in the occasional phrase. Thankfully, today, Maya's dad's parents weren't as interested in their ancestors' roots. Mostly were Irish, but I think we have some Czech and Greek and some Welsh in us, Maya's father had told her when she had asked about it. She was so glad no one was obsessed with that heritage. She couldn't even imagine trying to learn Gaelic or even more different, Czechoslovakian. She was also glad that her father was an only child. Not that she didn't love her cousins, she did, but family get-togethers were chaotic enough without even more little kids running around. After Maya's aunts and uncles and cousins left, Maya and her parents settled in with Maya's grandparents around a small bonfire with the backyard. It was a family tradition that the grandparents gave their grandchild a special birthday present after the party was over. Maya always loved his part of the birthday, just as she loved grandparents. Maya's 2 sets of grandparents couldn't have been more different. Her mother's parents were dark-skinned, short, round, their faces lined from years of smiling, their hands calloused from years of working. They ran a construction business. In their early 60s, they could have both wielded a hammer as well as any of their younger employees. Even Maya's gran could drive a nail with just 2 strokes. Maya's father's parents, on the other hand, were tall, pale, and soft-looking, self-proposed aging hippies. Nana and Pappy were artists, and the only thing their hands revealed are the colors of paint that they're using in their latest creations. They looked younger than 60 some years, and they sounded even younger than that. So, you're 16, Maya, Pappy said now. Right on, he patted her knee. Maya noticed the age spots were joining the freckles on the back of Pappy's hands. Pappy reflected the Irish part of her dad's family background, whereas the dad had black hair. Pappy's hair was deep auburn. Because this is a special year, sweetie, Nana said. We all chapped in together to get you something, well, special. She looked at the husband and the Gran and Gramps. Isn't that right? Gran nodded. She pulled a small red velvet pouch from her pocket in a gingham apron, which she hadn't removed even though she left the kitchen hours before. She held it out and Maya took it. Maya pulled on the pouch's string. She turned the pouch over. A thin gold chain with delicate gold rose pendant fell out of the pouch. Oh, Maya gasped. It's beautiful. Maya elbowed Pappy. I told you she'd love it. Pappy shrugged. She winked at Maya. I voted for one of those video game contraptions. I thought someone your age would want something more techy. Maya shook her head. I've had techie already, Pappy. She smiled widely as their thought of the virtual birthday party from the night before. This is perfect. Alina helped Maya put on the necklace on, then hugged her sister. Happy birthday, big sis. Maya's parents and grandparents hugged Maya in turn. When they were done, Maya's dad, Fireflight, making the scalp throwing showing through his thinning buzz cut, appeared to shine. Out of his guitar, Maya and her parents and grandparents sang old folk songs for the next hour, until Lena had her brain needed to sleep. When Maya settled under the covers that night, listening to Lena's snores, her sister always fell asleep in seconds. Maya pressed her fingers on her forehead. The slight headache had nagged her off and on all day, was throbbing more intensely down. Was the pain related to her time in the AR booth? No, Maya thought. It was probably just a coincidence. She was simply overtired. Maya closed her eyes. It was really a perfect birthday. She had her big party, her traditional party, as well as in her world. Maya closed her eyes and relaxed into sleep. When Maya looked back toward the end of everything, she could really easily pinpoint when it all started to go weirdly wrong. She remembered the first shock, of course, but at the time it didn't seem at all that strange. Sad, yes, but not strange. After all, it wasn't unusual for a 62-year-old woman to get breast cancer. And it wasn't unusual for them to lose their battle in the disease, even after weeks of chemotherapy and radiation. Besides Gran's cancer diagnosis, nothing about the ordinary happened in the year following Maya's 16th birthday. Things were pretty normal, except for Maya's recurring headaches. The headaches, though annoying, had never been serious enough for her to tell anyone about them. Secretly, she wondered if the AR booth headband had done some kind of nerve damage. However, since the booth had been closed and she used it, she didn't think about had any right to complain to anyone about it. Besides, the pay was low grade and intermediate. She told herself it was nothing. So, Maya's 17th birthday was nothing like her 16th. Although Gran tried to insist that the party go on as usual. No one was in the mood to celebrate anything. The night before Maya's birthday, Gran was like a transparent copy of her old self, as if someone had shaky hands had tried to transfer her likeness into a flimsy tracing paper. On the night of Maya's 17th birthday, Maya wasn't sitting around the bonfire with her parents, sister, and grandparents. Instead, she and Gramps, Maya's parents, her sister, her aunt, and uncles, and her cousins clustered around Gran's bed in Gran and Gramps' living room. Gran was insisting on passing away at home, so when they turned her previously cozy and comfy room into a sick room, it was a room barely large enough to contain all the people who had come to say goodbye and wasted a woman in the narrow bed. And it wasn't a room not nearly big enough to contain all the love the family had for this woman, who was close to taking her last breath. The room was also inadequate for holding the grief that was born and grew as full stature the second Gran was gone. Later, as Maya and Alina clung to each other in Alina's bed, Maya asked, "Why, Gran? Why not mean old Mr. Vance from down the street? I saw him kick his dog once. He's a jerk. Why not him?" Alina hugged Maya tighter. "It doesn't work like that. There isn't some good or bad like Santa has. It's biologically and chemistry and DNA and BS. It's BS, Alina. It's just..." Maya burst into tears. She touched the gold rose that hung from her neck. She hadn't taken off the special necklace since she put it on. She held it tight now, as if by holding on to it she could hold on to her Gran. When Maya finally crawled into her own bed and tried to settle to sleep later that night, she wasn't relaxed at all. All was not well in her world. She just lost one of her favorite people on the planet. What would be next? The answer to Maya's question came within just a few days. Pappy was diagnosed with cancer next. It was in his brain, and it was fast growing. He was unable to care for himself within a month of getting his diagnosis. Maya and her extended family took turns doing everything for Pappy. And before Pappy reached the end, Gramps got his diagnosis. "He's not going to fight it," Maya's mother said to Maya's dad the day they got the news. Maya and her parents were at the dinner table picking the plates of spaghetti. No one had an appetite. Maya's mother, though, was stoic. Her eyes were dry. Maya, on the other hand, felt like she was drowning in tears. She had trouble breathing, too, as if it had a big hole settled in her chest and was squeezing the air out of her. Why was everything happening to her family?
As Maya got ready for bed that night, Alina just sat in front of the computer they shared. If it was just Gran and Gramps, Alina said, tapping a few keys, I suspect something sardonic on their building supplies. But it's Pappy, too. Maybe his plants? His paints? Maya took over his sister's shoulder. As Alina clicked the mouse, the display shifted an article to the words, page under construction. Alina sighed dramatically. I'm going to bed, Maya said. Alina said, and clicked the mouse to open a new search window. For the next several nights, Alina stayed up late, researching the causes of cancer. Maya wasn't good at research, so she spent her spare time reading to her grandfathers. Pappy, of course, didn't understand her anymore. But she knew he was aware of the presence. Gramps was telling her that she should stop wasting her time catering to the dying old fart. You should be out on a date, he told her several times. Mia tried to remember the last time she cared about going on a date. Just a few months ago, she had a crush on a junior varsity quarterback. Now, when she looked at a carefree grin and tousled hair, she just felt annoyed. Wrapped up as she was in her sick grandparents, Mia didn't pay any attention to what was going on with anyone else. It was only after Nana got cancer and died, days after Gramps and Pappy were gone, that Maya emerged from her grief fog and noticed the people all around her were getting the dreaded disease. Mr. and Mrs. Lambert succumbed not long after Maya's grandparents passed. Maya hadn't even known they'd been sick until their grown children showed up to close up and sell the house. Maya had felt bad when she found out. She hadn't even been over to see them since Gran had gotten sick. Weirdly, she vaguely wondered what would happen to Miss Lambert's award-winning coffee cake recipe. But she didn't think about it for too long. Mr. and Mrs. Davis were diagnosed next. When Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, Maya hadn't even noticed that hadn't been asked to babysit for a while because she'd been so preoccupied with the grandparents. When she found out they were sick, she went to see the Thompsons, and she offered to take care of them with the kids. She did the same for the Davis family, running back and forth between the two homes, and her own took up all her free time after school. At school, she was barely conscious, however. She was aware enough to notice that she was hearing the word cancer far more than she had been. My brother was admitted to the oncology ward last night, the varsity head cheerleader said to their crew as Maya shuffled past their table in the noisy cafeteria. We're taking care of my sister at home, Brandon's best friend, Mackenzie said. The hospital said the oncology ward was full. Actually, there weren't any beds in the whole hospital. When people go to the ER, they park the beds in the hallway. Brandon had no response to that. The other girls at the table were equally unconcerned. Maya stopped and stared at them. They didn't notice her. Did you try that new mascara I told you about? Brandon asked one of the other girls. The girl in pretty blonde front of her eyes. Can't you tell? Everyone at the table admired the girl's long eyelashes. They shook her head and took her tray over the table, where Jackson and Noelle were already seated. Maya flopped onto the plastic chair and slammed her tray on the sacred laminate top table. She gestured toward the cheerleader table. Can you believe them? They're acting like it's no big deal. Like, what's no big deal? Noelle asked. Maya frowned at her friend. All the cancer. Jackson shrugged. My mom was diagnosed last week. Maya's mouth dropped open. I'm so sorry. You didn't say anything. What to say? Jackson said. As he dug into his chili on his tray. The pungent scents of tomato and onion filled the air. They all want to go to the Pizza Plex this weekend? Apparently the new animatronics show is pretty incredible. Maya stared at Jackson. He shifted her eyes to Noelle, who was nibbling in salad. Noelle was totally relaxed. Seriously? Maya said. The word came out of high pitch and too loud. Jackson and Noelle frowned at Maya. Several kids at the neighboring table turned to look at Maya with raised eyebrow. Maya lowered her voice and leaned toward her friends. Why are you acting like everything's normal? Jackson and Noelle exchanged a baffled look. Jackson gazed across the table because everything is normal? Maya slapped her hand on the table with a thwack cut of the chaotic conversation and tinkling cutterly sounds of the room. For a second, the sound stopped as several heads rotated Maya's way, and Maya ignored the scrutiny. She kept her voice low and steady as she spoke again. Haven't you noticed that it seems like everyone's getting cancer? My Aunt Sophia was just diagnosed. My Uncle Raphael was diagnosed a month ago. My grandparents have all died of it in the last 13 months. It's weird. Something's going on. Jackson shrugged. Cancer sucks for sure, but there's nothing weird about it. Maya opened her mouth to argue, but what was the point? She picked up her tray and stomped out of the cafeteria. She no longer wanted to hang out around her friends. They were clueless. She couldn't stand looking at the carefree faces. Over the next few weeks, Maya saw less and less of Jackson and Noelle. Summer arrived, and their friends got jobs at a local burger joint. Maya hadn't had the time for a job. She split her time between the hospital, where she'd sit with her aunts and uncles. Aunt Lucy and Uncle Peter had cancer now, too, while they received chemo, and her aunts and uncles' houses, where she would help take care of their older cousins, 4 of whom were now dying of cancer. She also helped out with the Davises and the Thompsons. Maya spent her days making food, exchanging sheets, emptying bedpans, doling out medicine. She spent her nights tossing and turning and listening to Alina snore. When Maya's grandparents had gotten sick, Alina had been a compatriot. and Maya's need for answers, but Alina had stopped going to the library. When Maya would ask about why people were dying of cancer, Alina would just shrug and stick her nose back into her latest math textbook. Maya sometimes thought of trying to figure out what was going on herself. Although she didn't like going at research, she knew how. But when would she have the time? She was too busy taking care of sick people. One afternoon, in late August, just days from the start of Maya's senior year, Maya finally got a good bit of good news. Her favorite teacher, Mrs. Carpenter, had her first baby. Noah stopped by to tell Maya about it. The two girls stood in front of the washer and dryer in Maya's house. Maya's father had been sick for a month. Because her mom was focused on caring of him, Maya was now doing everything else in the house. The cooking, the cleaning, the shopping, the laundry, even paying the bills. She wasn't sure how much longer she'd be able to do that. Her dad's chemo treatment was making him really weak. How long would he be able to keep working? How'd you hear? Maya asked as she and Noelle folded a sheet. My mom was in the hospice ward at the hospital. When I get bored sitting with her, I go to the nursery to look at the babies. Maya wanted to call Noelle out for the offhand way she talked about her mother's condition, but she also wanted more focus on something hopeful for a change. A new baby was hopeful. Is she still in the hospital? Maya asked. Mr. Carpenter, what that is. Noelle shook her head. I think she and the baby went home. Noelle's eyes lit up. Do you want to go see them? Maya nodded. She doesn't live too far from here. Let's ride our bikes. It only took 15 minutes for Maya and Noelle to pedal to a few blocks of Mrs. Carpenter's house. They reached a small cottage-style home, and the summer storm cloud released and the downpour and thunder rumbled across the sky. They dropped their bikes in the narrow driveway and scurried to the covered front porch. When they knocked, lighting lit up in the sky of them. Thunder sounded again, and just seconds later, Mrs. Carpenter opened their door. Girls, what a nice surprise. Mr. Carpenter wasn't a whole lot older than Maya and Noelle. She started teaching in Maya's sophomore year. She was tall, slender woman with a wavy brown hair and bright green eyes. She could easily have passed for a teenager. Even now, standing in her entryway, holding a blanket bundle to her shoulder. Maya craned her neck and glimpsed the child. Congratulations, Maya said. We came to see your baby. Maya held out a bunch of roses she picked from the backyard right before she and Noelle hopped onto the bikes. With everything that was going on, Maya had had the time to tend to her flowers, but they seemed to be taking care of themselves. A peach colored blooms in Maya's hand were healthy and fragrant. As she held out the flowers, she suddenly occurred to Maya that she would have brought something for the baby. Oh, I'm sorry, Maya blurted. We should have brought a toy or something for her. Her or him? Mrs. Carpenter backed up in motion for the girls to come in the house. They stepped into the cramped but tidy living room. It was bright and white walls and yellow upholstered furniture. The room smelled like lemon furniture polish. The whole house smelled like fresh brewed coffee. This surprised Maya. She had been in her aunt's and uncle's homes after each of her younger cousins had been born. Her houses had always smelled like a mixture of dirty diapers and talc and spit up and sweet milk, and it was what Maya thought of a baby smell, a distinctive scent that seemed to come with infants. Her, Mr. Carpenter said, I named her Cecilia. She stopped in front of a small stone fireplace. Would you like to hold her? Sure, Maya accepted a bundle and Mrs. Carpenter offered her. Pulling a baby close to her chest, Maya inhaled and smiled. Nothing. She took another sniff. Nope, not a single thing. That was weird. Maya shifted the baby, carefully cradling the baby head with one hand. With the other hand, Maya pushed back the blanket that swathed the infant's face. Maya gasped. She almost dropped Mrs. Carpenter's baby. Why, Mrs. Carpenter's baby? Maya gazed in horror at the thing she was holding. All she could do is thrust it back, and Mrs. Carpenter run off and screamed to the house. Swallowing hard, aware of the sweat trickling down her spine, Maya looked up for Mrs. Carpenter. Mrs. Carpenter beamed at Maya, then looked at pride of joy in her new daughter. Maya shifted her gaze to Noelle, and had Noelle see what Maya was holding? Yes, Noelle was looking right in the baby's face. But really, there was no face to look at. There was a head, yes, but the head was featureless. It looked like an unfinished, see-through doll's head. Struggling to keep her expression composed, Maya started rocking the baby back and forth as if she was holding a real baby. With a quavering voice, she began singing a lullaby. Noelle started talking to Miss Carpenter about feeding schedules, and Maya turned away from her friend, her teacher. She surreptitiously peeled back the blanket so she couldn't see the whole of the thing in her arms. No, this wasn't a baby. She didn't know what it was, but it wasn't a baby. Smooth and limp like a jelly-filled, lifeless rag doll, the floppy content of the small blanket was an inert mannequin baby contained with a revolving, slick, translucent skin. Beneath the skin were faintest outlines of pale blue filaments. Extended throughout the thing's body, they looked like veins of sort of. Other than these barely perceptible strands, the thing's filling was cleared as its outer covering. The summer before Maya and her friends had visited Pizza Plex on her AR birthday celebration, Jackson had dragged Noelle and Maya to a sci-fi movie about the cloning. The thing Maya held reminded her of the unfinished clothes. It wasn't an infant, it was like a placeholder for an infant. Shall I take her, Miss Carpenter said. Maya whirled around. She tried to find her voice, but she couldn't. Suddenly nodded and returned to flaccid, what? Being? Creature? Not baby, that was for sure. Maya hands Cecilia to her mother. Can I get you girls a snack? Mrs. Carpenter asked. No, thank you, Maya had just said. To Noelle said. Sure. Miss Carpenter looked from Maya to Noelle. Maya frowned at her friend. I need to get back home, Maya told Miss Carpenter. I have a lot to do. It was sweet of you to visit, Miss Carpenter said. Cecilia likes being the center of attention. Mrs. Carpenter looked down at Cecilia as if the baby were the cutest thing in the world. Don't you, little one? Mrs. Carpenter nuzzled the baby's smooth, flat, squishy face.
Huh. I mean, I guess that's where the saying goes, huh? A face only a mother could love? Maybe that's just a really bad joke. Who knows? Anyways, what I do know is you guys should have a super fantastic, wonderful day. Be polite, be efficient, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And make sure to smile at the new day. As my bird Shaquequi would say. Anyways, hope you guys have a super fantastic, wonderful day. Be polite, be efficient, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you guys... Sorry. I'll see you guys next time.